bar. I'm used to looking at faces when I do this, but I understand because you're recording it, you're not going to do that. So okay. I'll I'll try to watch the chat for questions. I'm going to introduce myself in just a minute and get rolling here. I love talking about politics and this kind of stuff, and I'm really glad to be here. Um, but if somebody from the alliance or can also kind of keep an eye on the chat for me and help me out. I think sometimes when I'm doing the PowerPoint, I don't always see everything on the screen. If there are questions, I want you guys to ask questions, please, as we go through this. I know it's hard. Well, at least most people, I think it's hard. I know most people I work with think it's hard to do a lot of Zoom and stay engaged. It's challenging when you're just staring at a screen. So the more questions that you have and that you can ask, and the more I'm talking about things that you care about and are interested in, the better. And I can go in any direction and talk about anything about what I'm going to share in greater detail if you'd like, in more of an overview if you'd like. I can give examples if you'd like. Whatever you guys would like, I'm happy to do. So um, it's sometimes hard when you're not in a room or whatever to kind of figure out if what you're saying is interesting to people or not. So don't be shy. If you want me to move on, tell me to move on. If you want me to ask a question, answer a question, please ask a question. I'm happy. I'm happy to do that. It's a pretty small group. Do we have time to do quick intros, or maybe somebody can just give me a sense of who I'm speaking to?
We can absolutely do intros, sir.
That would be great. If people could just go around and, I understand if you turn your camera on or don't turn your camera on, that's up to you. And just tell me who you are so I just know who I'm talking to, and we can do that quickly.
Hi, Jeff. I'm Kitty Tong. Kitty.
Kitty? Okay.
Yes.
And I'll just call on my screen. That's usually the way to do it on the order. Travis. Hi, Travis. Molly? Molly, you're muted.
There I am. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. It's been a while since I've done a Zoom. My name is Molly Peters. I'm from Iowa. I had brain surgery about 4 years ago.
Okay.
So still trying to kind of roll into this side of things. So I'm anxious to hear what you got to say.
Wonderful. Laurie?
Hi, I'm from Iowa as well.
Okay. I think I did. Did I do Travis? Yes, we did Travis. Alex?
Hi, yes, my name is Alex Carrick. I was involved in an accident approximately 10 years ago, giving me a TBI and PTSD. I'm from Illinois, so I'm happy to be here with you guys. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Catherine?
Hi, my name is Kat Youngblood. I currently work with IACP, but my son was a victim of a traumatic brain injury at 5 months, so that's why I'm here.
Wow, is that where you are, or is that just a really cool background?
It's a fake background. I wish I was there.
That is really cool. Okay, cool. Greg, or did I do Greg? The screen's bouncing around on me now.
I'm Greg. I'm from Iowa, and I've had a stroke January 23, and I've been with the Brain Alliance of Iowa, and it's been fantastic help.
Glad to hear it. Maureen?
Hi. I
Hope you remuted yourself. You were off for a minute.
sorry. Hi, my name is Maureen Lonergan. I'm actually an admin professional / materials specialist here at BIAIA.
Okay.
I don't have a BI, but I'm autistic and ADHD and have PTSD. So I'm very passionate about self-advocacy and disability rights and just trying to make it possible for everybody to get the support services and accommodations we need.
Great. Jessa. You want to say hello? Jessa from Iowa in the chat. Okay. Roseanne, do you want to say hello?
Hi, my name is Roseanne Plant, and I am the wife of a traumatic brain injury. I like to say thriver. His vehicle was hit by a bus in November of 2016, and I advocate throughout the Midwest using garden therapy.
Cool. And then somebody's on the BIAI screen. Is that your organizational screen, or is that actual person? Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa.
That is me, sir. My name is Lynette Anderson. I interned with BIA starting back in January of last year and officially got brought on in October. I'm a neural resource facilitator with BIA and a combat medic veteran.
Okay, thanks, you guys. That's really helpful to me to know who I'm talking to. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm Jeff Nachbar. I'm the public policy director for the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance. And as a matter of fact, this Saturday will be 19 years since I walked into a room with a dozen citizen advocates who wanted to learn how they can get more involved in helping creating positive policy change around the issue of brain injury. And it was my very first day on my brand new job, and I knew I'd found my place. I have a background doing politics and organizing and community organizing, grassroots fundraising, campaigning. In fact, I spent most of 1990 in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, I was working for an organization. It was an environmental group called Clean Water Action, but they sent me there to be the state director of an environmental group. But my primary purpose was to organize the environment and labor community to support the reelection of Tom Harkin. So I had a blast in Iowa when I spent some time there. I also have family from there as well. But since I started this job, really, it's all about how do we create positive policy change and participating in the political process to bring about those changes. And this is hard work. I've been, doing political organizing my whole career. I got a few years left in it before I try some retirement and that kind of stuff. But I'm really been doing this for quite a while, and it's hard. And the only thing that I've found, and the most success that I've ever found, has been when people who are affected by the issues or affected by the problems decide that they want to get engaged and involved and help bring about and create a solution. And so that's why I wanted to know who you are and what you're all about. I spend most of my job working with the same group of kind of folks from Minnesota that you all represent, people with brain injuries, people who have consequences from their own personal brain injury, that have decided they want to share their story, that they want to get involved in helping creating positive change. Loved ones, husbands, wives, mothers, dads, brothers, sisters of people with brain injury who advocate on their behalf, who caregive on their behalf, and who see the system and the changes that it needs, and also the professionals that support them. And so my work with Minnesota has been all around trying to get those kinds of constituencies engaged in the policymaking process and involved in doing this work. So, I can tell you all kinds of interesting stories about well, I'd find them interesting. I don't know if you would, about experiences that I've had over the years doing this. But I really, really I like it. And I really get jazzed and about the fact that people can find their sense of power can actually get something accomplished and get something done, and win on these issues. And I'm not saying it's easy. And we know, there are so many challenges, to try and to get well, there are so many challenges to having a brain injury, to providing adequate supports and services, for getting dealing with your brain injury, to making the improvements that we need. There's just no shortage of concerns. There's no shortages of issues. There's no shortage of different problems and things that we need, to do it. We could talk about housing. We could talk about transportation. We could talk about employment. We could talk about healthcare services. We could talk about home and community-based services. All of these challenges, before us, in trying to get, uh, both the adequate and improved services and supports that we need. So you guys don't need me to yammer on about challenges. You know them, you see them, you deal with them every day. Um, and then we have to put on top of that, we deal with this political process. So, now I know that you guys are, and from the history that I've had working with a number of your staff down in the Iowa, I know you guys have your days on the Hill and you guys get engaged in the Iowa State Legislature. But I'm telling you, people usually don't get up in the morning and the first thing they decide is they want to participate in the political process. It's kind of crazy. Our session I keep rubbing my eyes. Our session just ended Sunday night at midnight. And when I think it was Courtney asked me to do this, I said, yeah, please wait till the session's over because then I know my schedule. But I've really only had a couple of days to kind of catch up on my sleep. But at any rate, so let me just show you something. I mean, I know that Minnesota is somewhat unique in the country right now, in that we have sort of one party in control of all arms of the state government, the state House, the state Senate, and the governor's office, and that's the Democrats are in charge of that. But here, here's this. Let me show you let me just do a quick screen share and show you guys. This is the end of our session on Sunday night. Oh, I didn't turn on. Hang on, I got to back up. I didn't turn on the sound, did I? So I go to share screen, click on share sound, and now I'll share it. Oops, you guys don't want to see that screen. That's the wrong screen. I'm usually pretty good at this. Zoom. We did, just like you guys, when the pandemic hit, everything went from in person to Zoom. And then now we're doing hybrid. So we do work with our citizen advocates. Here we go. So here's the end of our session.
Mr. President,
Turn on for 20 minutes.
Happen. I'll be happy to talk to you about it.
I've just thrown that on there. Oh, now it's still going. So I got to turn it off. So why in the world would anybody want to participate? That's the way I throw that on there. It's kind of humorous. I mean, they always yell and scream at the end, and one party fights with the other party. But why would anybody want to get involved in politics when they watch that? I mean, it's like it makes middle school look mature, like going back to middle school when you deal with a bunch of mature people. But the fact is this is how we make decisions. This is how. And I'm not sure what your state legislature is like in terms of the politics of what's going on in Iowa. I mean, I read about it and hear about it, but I don't have any special insight or expertise on it. I live. It's kind of weird. I live in Wisconsin, so I vote in Wisconsin, which is a strange political environment. But I work in Minnesota. I'm just across the bridge. I mean, basically, on the western edge of Wisconsin is pretty much the Twin Cities. In terms of the community. And so, what I'm trying to say is as much as you can kind of get a little turned off or disgusted by politics or wonder who the heck would choose to do this, I'm telling you, It works. It's vital. It's important. It's the only way that we're ever going to get the resources that we need to provide the services and supports. And yes, Congress and the president matter, and they set the overall framework for the the Brain Injury Act, Medicare, Medicaid, all the basic structures. But the real key decisions are made at the state level in terms of who's going to fund these programs. Whether you're looking for employment services and support. So anyways, that's enough of an intro. So let's say for a minute that you're like me and that you think, you know what, we really do need to do something politically. And yes, participating in the political process is kind of the most effective and the best way to do it. The next question really becomes how. So how can you effectively get involved in the political process? And that's what you guys have asked me to come talk about today. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to bring up on the screen that we use to, it's virtually always one of the very first trainings that we do with our programs. And really everything that we do is based on a model of telling your story. That's the title of the training today. And so what we've done in Minnesota is we've developed tools to help people do that. We really don't have time, and I'm sure you don't need to hear, or wouldn't even be interested in hearing about all of the different things that we do in Minnesota. We're really lucky in the Minnesota Brain Injury Alliance that we do have staff that can focus exclusively on the political process. I feel very blessed and honored to have the job that I have. But we do, if we're not at the Capitol advocating or engaged with our legislators, then we're doing our training and our support. So we have a year-round program where we call it the Citizen Advocates, where we do like a training session. We call that the Citizen Advocate Academy. We do town hall forums. We do candidate forums in the fall. Our legislature rolls around in January or February, and then we do have the big rally day at the Capitol. I think that's fun and people enjoy it. But two things about that. One, a one-shot deal at the Capitol is never going to be effective enough to create real change. And secondly, what people with brain injury have taught me is spending all day at the state Capitol is the equivalent of a brain injury torture chamber, and that you guys really that you couldn't possibly find, at least in Minnesota, I'm sure it's true in Iowa, a louder, more distracting, more things going on, brighter, just a place. And so we go to the Capitol every Tuesday, and we spend about 90 minutes doing stuff at the Capitol, and then we have lunch together. And that's the extent of pretty much what we do on Tuesday. But you guys have taught me that, so we try to do it in bite-sized chunks. So everything we do is built around the model of telling your story, and I'm going to roll into a PowerPoint. I'm going to go through it pretty briefly and at high level. Please, if you have a question, ask. And if somebody who's on staff could keep the chat open and maybe even stop and ask me the question if I'm not responding to it, because sometimes, like I say, it's hard to watch the chat while I'm doing other things. But I want to give you guys a sense of a tool, and you can have this. You can have this PowerPoint. You can have this tool. You guys can do whatever you'd like with it. So I am going to share my screen again, and I'm going to grab this PowerPoint. I'm going to click on share, and can everybody see that? I'm assuming, somebody tell me if you can't. I'm assuming that it's working. So then I'm going to hit, when I hit play, I think it'll go full screen. There we go. Okay, I see a thumbs up. Okay, so this is a training that we've done and modified over the years, and like I say, it's totally open source. You guys can use it, take what you want from it, add to it, subtract, whatever you'd like. Everything that I've ever taught or learned is stuff that I've pretty much learned from somebody else and put my own twist on. So that's the way the world works, and I'm totally open source on that. If you'd like to use it, feel free. And so this is the telling your story, how you create policy change. So let me show you what I share with folks as I do this. For some reason I got an okay screen. I have to. Oh, it's just telling me that. Okay, great. So who's the expert on your life? And that's the thing that I want people to know is that a lot of people say, well, geez, I don't know anything about politics. How can I get involved in that? Well, let me tell you something. You guys have more expertise than those lobbyists scurrying around the Capitol and those legislators that are there. Now, there are some legislators that have experience with brain injury. Don't get me wrong. Brain injury affects all walks of life, as you guys well know. So there are legislators that either A, have a brain injury or a family member with a brain injury. But most people don't know a lot about brain injury. And so you guys are the experts on this. And so what is advocacy? So there's two different ways that I've found helpful to think about advocacy. One is personal advocacy, and this is individual focused advocacy. This is ensuring that you or your loved one are getting the best services and supports that they're entitled to, that they deserve. And this is a big job in and of itself, because I'm guessing, just like I haven't talked to hardly anybody over the years in brain injury that knew much about brain injury and before they got a brain injury, or before somebody they knew or loved got a brain injury. And trying to navigate the system as it currently exists is an incredible challenge, and trying to figure out what you qualify for, how you qualify for it, what are the limits, what are the asset limits or income limits, and how do you get transportation, how do you get we call them waivers, I don't know if that's what they're called in Iowa, but it's how you get home and community-based supports through Medicaid. We call it medical assistance. I forget what it's called in Iowa. And so people need a lot of help and a lot of work. You guys have a resource for referral program, RF, just like we do, and we spend a lot of time trying to help people within that system. That's one very critical and important role of advocacy. The second kind of advocacy, and this is the advocacy that I get paid to do, that because I have the best job in the world, and that's political advocacy, and that's system focused. So this is creating changes in the system to improve services and supports for people with brain injury or other disabilities. So there's personal advocacy, which is how does the system as it's currently implemented, designed, set up, how does that work, and how do you help people advocate for themselves within that system to get the programs and services and supports that they are entitled to, and how do you maximize that, and what do you do once you get denied, and how do you appeal and all that stuff? What if your PCA hours get cut, right? I mean, we spend a lot of time on that organizationally. I know you guys do too. I know you do. I can't imagine that you don't. And then what are the changes to the system that we actually need, right? Because you have all these services and supports out there that have all these rules. Well, who made these rules up? That's all public policy. That's all stuff that politicians and people have made. And so, yeah, maybe people are entitled to that service and supports, but what happens if they make too much money? What if they have too much savings? Well, somebody set that system up. And so I'm going to focus on how to do political advocacy, systems focused advocacy. Another way of thinking about it is lobbying. And I know a lot of people kind of think lobbying is kind of a dirty word. Those lobbyists that run around, with all this power and control. Is it like a bunch of, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of people in black suits running around the Capitol, get paid big money to try to influence legislation. That's direct lobbying. That's where an organization hires somebody like me. I'm a direct lobbyist. I get paid to direct lobby. I go talk to legislators about bills that we're working on. I testify in committee. I help write amendments. I count votes. I try to persuade and that kind of stuff. And, there's nothing wrong with it. It's important. You got to be there. But I don't, in and of myself, I don't have any power. I can't run around the Capitol and then people are like, well, wonder what Jeff wants us to do today. Wonder what the Brain Injury Alliance wants us to do today. That in and of itself doesn't represent a lot of power. There's grassroots lobbying. And grassroots lobbying is the kind of effort where I'm working with other folks to have them get in touch with their legislators, to have them get in contact. It could be city council, it could be Congress, it could be whatever, but you're working and organizing on a grassroots level to have people talk directly to their legislators. And I think I said this earlier. I believe strongly that it's A, the most effective strategy that we could possibly do, and B, that it's the only one that's ever been successful in my. I mean, there are things where something just captures the public attention and good things happen. I mean, I think we saw a little bit of that with concussions over the last 10 years, but rarely does this stuff just spontaneously happen. It happens because there's a group of people committed to it. And so what is grassroots lobbying? You know, and and personal stories, telling your story is the most effective grassroots lobbying strategy that exists. And so we developed a tool that we're calling the storyboards for people to use to tell their story. Now I'm gonna give you an overview of these storyboards. I'm not gonna do a training do this training like I would typically with our advocates right now to help them write their story. I mean, we can do that sometime if you'd like. I'd be happy to come back and do this. But what I'd like to do is give you more of an overview of it and share it with you as a strategy that you could use, and then let you guys decide if it's something that you want to do. And if it's something that you decide you want to do, you know, we can spend some more time on it, or if you'd like, or I'm sure your staff is perfectly qualified to help you guys put this together. But essentially, a storyboard is the tool that you can use to help share your story. And this is, I mean, I didn't invent the concept of storyboards. I mean, storyboards is exactly, um, you know, storytelling probably goes back to the caves we lived in around campfires, right? Or whatever. Storyboards, certainly how they make movies. I mean, they're not 3 pages. My storyboards are 3 pages, the ones we use. Um, uh, um, but I kind of got this idea from one of those featurettes that was on a DVD that showed the storyboards for this video I was watching, and how the person who produced the video would script out you know, what they wanted to say, and when they were and how they were going to say it. And so there's nothing sort of, you know, unique or whatever about grassroots lobbying and storyboards. It's just a tool that you can use to plan what you want to say. And you absolutely must plan and practice what you want to say. And so these storyboards really help you frame your story around specific problems and solutions. And like I say, I'm not going to go into whole details, but in terms of how we do this with our advocates. But I'm sure you guys can relate. You know, that we're not just talking about problems. I mean, I'm sure you guys have lots of friends or people in your life that all they want to do is sit around and talk about problems. I'm talking about problems and solutions. How do you create a problem and a solution? That's the way that you can effectively, how do you use your story to illustrate a problem that leads to a solution? That's what I'm talking about here. And we need to be able to frame and do that, because brain injury is so complex. Your lives are so complex. You can't possibly, even if you had enough time, which you don't, because we're talking about politics here. I'm basically equate what you're able to do. If you get a meeting with your legislator, you're lucky. Well, maybe luck's the wrong word. Typically, they're like 15 minutes long. How can you tell the story about brain injuries affected your whole life in 15 minutes? Plus, you got to make time for small talk and all that with the legislators. And so this is a tool to help you frame and make that happen. It can turn your story into an effective political message that can lead to the change that you're creating. It helps you stay focused and brief. And that is challenging. And I know that's challenging for people with brain injury. It's challenging for anybody, really, to stay on message, because, and again, because there are so many different categories and ways that you could take your story, because there are so many issues. But the nice thing is once you do these storyboards, you can use them in many, many different ways. You can take them to an in-person meeting that you have. You can take it to a town hall forum. You can use it as a basis for an email or a letter that you're going to write. You can use it for any social media campaign that you might want to do, blogs, YouTube. Maybe you want to make a YouTube video about your story. Maybe you want to write a letter to the editor. Maybe you want to pitch a story to a TV reporter. anything that you're doing, I would argue, requires preparation and practice and focus. Okay, and that's why we designed these tools. So let me go over them a little bit one at a time. So the introduction is really your sort of personal 60-second commercial. And because we're in politics, I always tell people, state your name and where you live. Because one of the things a legislator is always wondering, although they may not say it, can this person vote for me or not vote for me? And if once they understand that 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 you can, they're going to perk up and pay a little closer attention. And then tell them and share your story briefly about brain injury. I think the best way to get people to understand brain injury is for people with brain injury or their loved ones to describe how it affects their life. And this doesn't have to be, comprehensive. Just tell them a story about how brain injury has affected your life. And then, we do things for our advocates, like give them examples. So this is just an example. But you guys can write your own story, and it's basically just a paragraph. And you can be serious. You can use a little bit of humor if you'd like. Whatever communication style you feel comfortable with. But you really want to try to capture the person's attention in that first minute that you have with them. And so this is really, we did this as an example about trying to simplify paperwork for applying for, it's called medical assistance in Minnesota. Again, I don't remember what you call Medicaid in Iowa. But it's just all the complicated paperwork that's involved with it. We were working on a campaign to shorten that. So people were talking about all the different forms they had to fill out and how you have to requalify every year. They don't ask you any new questions, but they give you a blank form and you have to fill out the same questions over and over again, or they change something. Anyways, you guys know. But the most important thing here is to be authentic, to be you. The second, and this is where it gets a lot more challenging, storyboard. The second storyboard, and is where it gets a lot more challenging, is to pick a problem. What is the problem that you want to talk to them about? And this is really hard because I'm going to tell you that if you want to be effective, you only get to pick one problem. And it doesn't mean you can't talk about more than one problem. You can only talk about, I'm just saying you can only talk about one problem at a time. So you can have as many storyboards as you want, but you only get to work on them one at a time. Some people say, well, this is related to the other thing. I said, well, maybe if you're persuasive, you can talk about two things, but I'd really strongly recommend that you don't go trying to connect the whole world together. You're just going to lose people. And that you focus in on one issue, one problem at a time. And so again, this is an example where we were talking about paperwork. So I know that that's really hard, but really to be effective, pick one. And maybe tomorrow you want to pick a different problem. That's fine. I'm not saying you only get one choice and you have to work on this one problem for the rest of your life until it's solved. I'm saying that if you want to be effective in doing grassroots advocacy, you should focus on one problem at a time. And I'm not here to tell you what problem to focus on. You focus on the problem that you think is most important to you. Sometimes people say, well, what do you want me to, what should I focus on? And I'm like, well, what do you care about? People sometimes want to know what issues the Brain Injury Alliance is working on. And then they tailor their story to that issue. And you can do that if you want, but it doesn't matter to me as the public policy director for the Brain Injury Alliance, if you're talking about the issues that I'm working on, or you're talking about issues that you're working on, because in both cases, you're increasing the awareness of brain injury and how it affects people. In your case in Iowa, in my case in Minnesota. And make sure you connect the problem directly to your life. We all have thoughts about how the world could be a better place, but you're going to be more authentic and more listened to if you're talking about something that you have personal experience with. And when I said early on that you're the expert, you are the expert. Nobody knows what it's like to fill out. And I'm just going to use this as an example because it's what we used on this particular presentation. Nobody's a bigger expert on filling out MA paperwork than you guys. And another thing that I really recommend is that you avoid blaming and that you focus on why it needs to be fixed rather than whose fault it is that the problem is created. So anyways, once you figure out what you want to work on, how, and then describing how it affects your life and boiling that down. And you can write, excuse me, you can use this tool either, I mean, everybody's got a little different style. Some people like to write out word for word what they want to say. Some people like to just use bullet points, and you can just make little notes about topics that you want to say. But it really, really helps you prepare and it helps you stay focused, as I said. It just and try so hard, try to not go off on too many tangents. You can tell them a story about how it. Sorry about my voice. You can. It's allergy season too. And there's so much tree pollen in the air. Um, You can tell them a story about how it affects your life, but try not to go on too many tangents. Oh my God, I can't do this with my voice like this. The next thing is make sure you focus on a solution. You're not just going to sit around and admire a problem. You're going to focus on a solution. What do you want them to do about the problem? And that's one of the next things that every legislator is one. I'm sorry, guys. Every legislator is wondering about is what do you want me to do about it? And I think you guys even do that if your friend's explaining a problem to you. What the heck you want me to do about it, right? So that's just normal human nature. So describe the change that you want and how it'll affect your life. And so in a lot of cases, this is built around legislation that we're working on. So in a lot of cases, the solution we get to is the bill that we're working on and why we want them to support that bill. But sometimes you might not have a bill. And it doesn't really matter if you don't know if you don't have a bill or you don't know what the solution is, you can still ask them to work with you on it. And so the final storyboard is then what the solution is. And always, always, always ask for a commitment. And the commitment can be, can you continue to work with me on it? But the commitment could also be, can I count on your support for this bill? Will you vote for this bill? Don't let them pat you on the head and thank you for coming in. These are politicians. They don't like making commitments, but your job is to get them to make a commitment. And a lot of, I'm not saying all of them don't like making commitments. We have a lot of champions and people who really care about these issues. But basically you want to ask them for a commitment and always, always, always say thank you. Even if they have not agreed with the thing that you said, they won't make a commitment. They tell you they won't do anything that you you want them to do. You can always say thank you for your time. So just in summary on these storyboards, be brief, focus on one issue, get a commitment, and always say thank you. And so then this presentation, we went more into also then how to use your story. But schedule a meeting with your state senator or state representative. I don't know if your session's still going on or exactly what the timing is of your guys' session down there in Iowa. But it doesn't have to be in session. Sometimes it's good to do it when they're not in session, when they're back in their community, schedule and they schedule a meeting with them at a local coffee shop. As opposed to going down to the Capitol and doing something in their office. Send them a letter, send them an email, pick up the phone. I'm sure your candidates will have town hall forums. I'm not sure what your election cycle is in Iowa in terms of where you are with your legislative elections, but if you're like most states, the House is up every 2 years. So whoever's and the Senate in Minnesota is up every 4 years. We're not having a Senate election this year or a governor election for that matter. We're simply having a state house election, although there is a little known presidential election coming up. You can write a letter to the editor. You can get involved in these campaigns. I know that the Brain Injury Alliance of Minnesota, and I'm sure it's true for the Brain Injury Alliance of Iowa, doesn't tell people who to vote for. We don't endorse candidates or political parties, but we can say, vote for the candidate that reflects your values. And here's how you find out. So write a letter to somebody who's running for office or pick up the phone and call and say, how do you guys stand on simplifying paperwork for Medicaid? Or attend an event. You guys, I know you guys do Days on the Hill. I know you guys do different community style events. So at any rate, that's the sort of presentation that I wanted to make in the time that I had. Great, to make sure I had 15, 20 minutes at the end for any questions or comments. But that is the storyboards and the sort of presentation that I'm trying to find my mouse. Where did my mouse go? It's not showing. It's showing as a highlight. There we go. Oh, that's because I was in full screen. Did I stop sharing my screen? I believe I did. And so the other thing I'll just show you is we have these storyboards blank. And so if you guys want these, what I like to do is to print them out on bright green construction paper, so it's easy for people to find. But you guys can have these and use them yourself as well. But it's a really, really valuable tool for telling for for getting your story into a form that it can be helpful politically, because that's the biggest challenge that I've found in doing this work. Because legislators, think of it like an elevator, right? You get on the elevator with them. You guys have heard the term elevator speech. You get on an elevator with them, and they're riding up to one floor. You're riding up to the other floor. Maybe it's from the bottom to the top, and you can press all the buttons to make it take as long as you want. But the fact is when they get to the top, when they get to their floor, they're leaving. So it doesn't matter what you meant to say; it matters what you said. It's what's really important that you're focused on what you want to say, and this tool can help you do that. So I wanted to leave time for questions and any conversation or thoughts that you guys have, rather than spend the full hour talking about how to fill out the storyboards. So with that, let me see what you guys think. Any thoughts, questions, or comments? Check the chat here. Okay. Anybody?
Yes, sir. I have a question. If it's okay if you speak it, I'm faster speaking than I am typing.
No, speaking is great. If you don't mind, it's probably the easiest way to do this. Yep.
Okay, great. One of the things that I was thinking of doing to help out was starting a collection of maybe poetry or short stories of my fellow brain injuries to then produce into a book, and then use that as a part of my storytelling to the public and to the government, to show them what's going on in our world.
That's a great idea. In fact, I had an applied experience intern, and I don't have the physical copy with me. It's in the office, so let me see if I find it. Here we go. So I need to do a screen share again. So I think that's a great idea. I think it can be effective. I think it'd be important. The next question you want to ask yourself is it something that you want to do? If you want to use it in sort of a political way, then I think you need to try to be brief. And so what we did, hang on, I'm talking and trying to do two things at once. Let me go back to share screen. You guys probably, I don't know, do you guys use Canva? So we created this book this year with about a dozen. Can you guys, everybody see that? Somebody give me a thumbs up
Yes, sir.
emoji. Okay. So we created a book, Citizen Advocates, kind of a story catalog or a story book. And so inside and this is a PDF, and we printed it out on ring binders, and you can also send it. So on each then was a story about brain injury, and we did them front and back. And so we used the storyboards also as kind of a way of framing it. But the intern, the student that worked with me, met with all of our advocates, looked at all the storyboards and the work that they'd worked on in the past, and then we developed this book. So we have Andy's story here, and then and some advocates want, like I say, you can work on 2 issues, but you have to have 2 different stories. So Eric's got 2 stories. Eric's got a housing story, and Eric's got a MA. It's Medical Assistance for Employed Persons with Disability story, which is I don't know if you guys have it. It's a way of instead of having income and asset limits for Medicaid, you pay a premium based on how much you earn. And then Jason has a story. And so we created, and it's probably what is it? Oh yeah, 22 pages long, front and back. So it's 11 pages. So it's pretty brief. But we put people's picture on it, and we used the sort of problem, issue, solution kind of model, and started moving it forward. And Patsy had 2 stories as well. And so I think that's a great idea. This we did, and again, I'm not showing you an example telling you how I think you should do it. I'm showing you an example of something that we did, where the intent was to use it for political purposes, and to create kind of a booklet. So so the other thing that so these are all the advocates that come to the Capitol every Tuesday. And I think I mentioned, we used to do it only in person, and then the pandemic hit and we only did it online. Then we did it hybrid, where we would do the first few minutes together, and then the people at the Capitol would do their thing, and the rest of us online would do our thing. And then my staff got another job, so I couldn't be in 2 places at one time. So then we went to 1 week online, 1 week at the Capitol. But it was a really effective way then for these people to deliver their stories to their legislators. And we also used it. We called it the paper route, where we would drop off a flyer every Tuesday at a legislator's office, and we used the same sort of idea that you saw with the storyboard. Maybe I can show you that quick too. Where this intern just gave me this yesterday. I was so excited when she finished it and got copies of it. It looked great. They called themselves legislative liaisons, and I called them the paper boys or paper girls. And so we had a 1-page flyer every Tuesday that we would pass around to legislators. And so, the first one we do is like our public policy priorities. The next one we do is like, what is medical assistance and how does it work? So we're educating lawyers, educating lawyers, attorneys. Well, a lot of them are lawyers. And then we were working on and so we did different issues: interpersonal violence and traumatic brain injury. We had our Brain Injury Awareness Day, and so we had people telling their story there. And then we talked about many different kinds of issues. So there's lots of different ways that you can use these stories to create documents. So Alec, tell me if that's similar, similar to what you got in mind.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. But I think I would like to maybe have a quick little poem maybe at the bottom to give some feelings about how someone's feeling when they're going through this. Other than that, I don't think I would change too much. I think you have a pretty good platform there. I think I'd maybe add a poem to the bottom to some people if they want to kind of give a direction for some people, because sometimes it can be very riveting to have a poem that actually makes you convinced that, to really go, oh, that's how it feels. Holy crap, man. And that's the way you could describe it to someone,
So you can use it as a tool for increasing the awareness of how brain injury affects people's lives through the art form of poetry. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I've done it myself. I've had a couple poems. I've never published them, but I've had some people tell me that, wow, that really gives me some insight into how you're feeling and how you're going through this. And I've used it in my therapy. And so a lot of people are able to get a better connection. Someone who doesn't have brain injury can connect to it so hard, fast that way. Some people are just great at discussing things, but for me, poetry makes it a lot easier for someone to get a quick response out of someone.
I'm sure you guys did the art thing too, the unmasking. Did you guys do an unmasking project where you make brain injury masks?
Sadly, I go virtually. I go virtually, so I wasn't able to do one.
Yeah, we did this. This was pre-pandemic. I know a lot of states did, and what we did is during Disability Day at the Capitol, during that week, we actually got the back hallway behind the rotunda reserved, and we did a display. And so legislators basically got to walk through this display because it was very convenient. It was right there. It was right on their way to the floor or whatever it is that they were doing. And so we used art in terms of the masks and the brief little placards on each mask that tell a story about brain injury as a way of increasing awareness through the use of art as a different approach for people, so that politicians could experience that art as a way of thinking about brain injury. So I think you're onto something. Of course, I'm a political organizer, Alex. So I would say, how are you going to put a political message on there and make sure that legislators take action as a direct result of those poems? You don't have to, but that's, I'm just saying that's the way my brain works. Boom, boom. How can I take this teachable moment, or this open moment that perhaps your poetry has created that wouldn't have otherwise been there, and use that connection to get them to take the next step. So I think that'd be a fun thing to try to figure out.
I think you're right, sir. I was just kind of looking for a little bit of, I think you gave it to me, great reinforcement, like, hey, yeah, you do have a good idea. A little tweaking here and there. We think we can maybe come up with something really good. So I'll do more discussions with the brain group and let somebody else talk for a little bit. But thank you, sir, very much. I appreciate it.
No, you're right. I love it because everybody says, and it's true, we need to increase awareness about brain injury. But there's no doubt.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no doubt. How do you do that? Well, there's a lot of different ways to think about doing it. It's important, but then to what end? How do you take that awareness and make something happen because of it? I'm just not satisfied unless we're making the world better. That's just me. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, one of the things that I was hoping is to do like a poetry book for the public and like do a more of like your storyboard thing for the politicians. That kind of was my thought, because I know sometimes that books seem to have that like that fire sometimes underneath something.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't, but
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
Cool. You're right. I'm sure you and I could talk for the rest of the time, and I don't know if people would be amused by it, but that would be great. Take the intros and make them all poems, and then do the prompts. Anyways, great. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else got thoughts, questions, ideas?
We do only have a few more minutes left.
I see that.
But Miss Kitty said, how does state advocacy relate to the Congressional Brain Injury Task Force work?
They're not directly related. The Congressional Brain Injury Task Force is at the U.S. Congress level. And so there are different, you guys want me to sing I'm Just a Bill from Schoolhouse Rock? You guys remember that, right? You guys all saw Schoolhouse Rock as a kid, right? That's not a Minnesota thing. So there's different levels of government. So that's the Congress, that's the U.S. Senate, the U.S. House, the president. That's what's going on in Washington, D.C. Then you have the state legislative branch. That's your governor, your House, your Senate. There are a couple of states that just have, a unicameral legislature, but most states have a House and a Senate. I'm guessing you guys, the counties play a big role in health and human services in Iowa. I don't know if they play as big a role there as they do here in Minnesota, but counties have a role to play. Maybe the city council could have something to do. Maybe trying to maybe there's a dangerous intersection where people are getting hurt and you want a new stop sign, right? So there are different levels of government for getting engaged with. So the Congressional Brain Injury Task Force is working at the federal level. And it's a group of folks that have committed to working with brain injury in Congress. And again, we don't have time, and you guys would be sound asleep if I started talking about all the different ways to try to get Congress to do something. But the Traumatic Brain Injury Act and the federal funding for that, and the appropriations process that Congress goes through, that's what the Congressional Task Force does.
And then Travis said, taking on the federal government can be a complex and daunting task, especially
it is a complex. It's not that it can be. It is. Yes, absolutely, Travis.
Especially when dealing with a large and powerful organization like AIG. However, are there some general steps you can take to navigate the situation?
Yes. Your next question would be, what would be those steps? But I would have to know more about your personal situation and what you're trying to do before I could tell you what those steps are, but yes, and I would also argue that the whether you're talking again about advocacy within the existing system or changes or political advocacy in terms of what you're trying to change, that your personal experience in dealing with that is going to be the most effective way to move forward. And then, much like we haven't even done strategies and tactics and coalitions and collaborations, but, not just one individual, but maybe a group of individuals, maybe an organization, or maybe an organization of organizations. So you really have to sort of ramp up and build up that power. And I didn't mean to, I was joking around a little bit when you said it can be. It is tough. And there are a lot of powerful organizations who like the system the way it is just fine because they make a lot of money off of it. They don't like us trying to change it.
And then our last question is from Maureen. She knows a tried and true way to appeal to lawmakers is to show your request will save the government money in the long run. But what other strategies could be used when appealing to empathy doesn't work for whatever reason?
That is a brilliant question. And oh my God, I can't believe I talked and yammered on this long. I love talking about this stuff. I'm sorry, guys. I talk too much. Let me put it this way. This is the world according to Jeff. The art of persuasion isn't about convincing people to look at the world the way you do. So it's not about running around convincing people to care about brain injury. So it's not about it. It's trying to understand the way they look at the world. And so that's what's so important about your point, that a lot of legislators look at the world about how much, my job is to save the taxpayer money. My job is to make sure, how do they look at the world? And then how can you come to the same conclusion about what needs to be done about it? And so, yes, there are lots of strategies. And you're correct that one way of doing that is on the cost. Yeah, we're going to save lives, we're going to save money. What else can does this legislator have a person with a disability in their family? Do they have experience with the system and with some of the challenges? And so you really need, it needs to be more about building a relationship with that legislator and understanding where they're coming from, and then looking for a way to come to the same conclusion about something than what needs to be done. So that's what I'm saying. You can't just go around. I was going to say beating people on the head. Why would I say that? You can't just go around, trying to convince people that I can't go around trying to convince people to look at the world the way I do. I mean, I look at the world, I'm a pretty liberal guy. I got pretty strong views about the way the world should work, but that's not going to create any change. I need to build relationships with people, try to understand how they look at the world, and see if I can get them to agree. Yeah, we need to get the most out of every Medicaid dollar that the federal government and the state spends. And we're wasting all this money on paperwork. We need to reduce that paperwork and simplify that paperwork. Now, it doesn't matter if I'm a liberal or a conservative. I want to do that. Trying to get people to wear helmets. We don't have a helmet law for motorcycles in Minnesota. Well, it doesn't matter if you're an anti-government Republican or a libertarian Democrat. You don't think the government should tell people how to live their lives. Anyways, I got to be quiet. It's 12:59. One of the commitments I make to my citizen advocates is that our Zoom meetings are 1 hour, and I stop talking when that hour hits. So I'll keep that commitment to you guys. That's a brilliant question. It's really, really important, and there's no way to do it than to build that relationship with your legislator and figure out how they look at the world and what arguments are going to persuade them.
So I want to thank you, sir, for your time and sharing your expertise. For all of the attendees, if this has inspired you to share your story or look for a platform to tell your story, we at BIAIA are looking for those. So please reach out to us either via our email, which is info@biaia.org, or contact your neuro resource facilitator, and we'll be happy to help you gain that platform so that you can share your story in an effort to advocate for others.
Well, thanks. It was my pleasure to be here, and feel free to reach out if you have any more questions. I'm going fishing next week now that the legislature